Hey everybody, this is Ecology and Ecosystems Part 2. Here we go. Now let's talk about predation. Predation is basically when one animal or organism eats the other. Some anti-predator defenses that some organisms have actually just helps them stay alive. And you can see that coevolution is present when two species adapt in response to pressures that are put upon by the environment and the organisms that live around them. Now, just so you know, A here, this poisonous dart frog secretes skin secretions that are used by natives to actually make their arrows, really lethal. This is a poisonous dart frog, excuse me. And in general, brightly colored species tend to be toxic. Just keep that in mind. And it's just a way for them to keep predators away. And then the B part here, this is a caterpillar of the eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly. And these false eye spots actually help to confuse a predator and help them look more menacing than what they really are. And then on the C part here, this is a South American lanternfly, and it has a big false head that kind of resembles like a crocodile, and of course it's used to frighten predators too. It makes it look a whole lot bigger than what it really is. Now, predation, basically some animals have these things that help them stay alive, and of course one of those is mimicry. Mimicry is when one species resembles another species that's either poisonous or that's really predatory, something like that. Now, mimicry can help basically animals capture food, or it also helps them to avoid being preyed upon or eaten. And there are two different kinds of mimicry. You can have Batesian mimicry, and that's when a prey that's not harmful mimics a species that is harmful. For instance, having a warning coloration or looking like something that's really poisonous or scary or stings a lot. That's Batesian mimicry. And then Mullerian mimicry, that's basically a species that resembles another species, and they all have successful defenses. For instance, both the mimic and kind of the one that it's mimicking, they both sting, or they both are poisonous, or they both have really big teeth, and they eat a lot, something like that. Okay. So that's mimicry. It's when one species resembles another. Just some examples here. On A part, you have a yellow jacket wasp that uses, stinging as its defense. Okay. And on B part here and C, you have a flower fly and a longhorn beetle. Okay. Those don't sting, but they look an awful lot like yellow jackets. And so they look like this wasp, but they are incapable of stinging. But, basically other organisms, including humans, will stay away from them, okay, because they look, real predatory. And then D part, a bumblebee and the yellow jacket wasp, they are actually Mullerian mimics because they look similar and they both use stinging as a defense. Okay, so they will both sting and hurt you. Now, just some examples of symbiosis here that you can have. Symbiosis is just the close interactions between members of two species. With parasitism, parasitism is kind of a slow sort of predation, and that's where one species gets helped and the other one gets harmed. Commensalism is where one species gets helped and then there's no effect on the second species. It's not harmed, it's not helped. And then mutualism, that's when both species benefit each other. Now, the first one, parasitism, that's where one species gets helped and then the other one gets hurt. Basically, a parasite derives nourishment from a host. Okay, and basically, over time, the host can either lose a lot of nutrients or it can die. because of the parasite. Some examples that we all know about: disease-causing bacteria like strep or staph. Basically, they have to have a host in order to live, so they tend to live, inside of us. Things like ticks, leeches, mosquitoes. Here's a picture of a tapeworm at the bottom here. You can also have mistletoe on a tree. Mistletoe is actually a parasite because it will eventually wrap around the tree and really choke it to death if it really gets too big. Things like that. Now, symbiosis. Another type of symbiosis is commensalism, and that's where one species gets helped and the other one doesn't really get anything. It's not hurt and it's not helped. Some examples there are clownfish and sea anemones. Clownfish can live among the sea anemones, and sea anemones sting, of course, and the sea anemones don't get anything from the clownfish, but they just give the clownfish a place to live. Okay. And the second one are cattle egrets and then cows. Cattle egrets are able to eat the bugs off of the backs and the skin of these cows. The cows don't really get anything per se. They just kind of let them live there. Also, like a bird that lives in a tree, the bird isn't benefiting the tree per se. The tree just, has branches that the bird can live in. And then mutualism, that's where both species benefit. Like they both help each other. For instance, plants and pollinators, like bees or birds or even humans, can help spread pollen around. Okay. And that benefits plants because it helps them reproduce. And then also, these small fish can actually go inside and eat little nutrients and eat food inside the mouth of this big fish. And those small fish get a meal, and then the big fish actually get their mouths cleaned out. Okay, things like termites. Termites are able to digest wood because of a protist that actually lives in their gut, and the protists get a home. They get constant food from the termites, and the protists produce cellulase, which helps break down wood. So both the termites and the protists help each other. Okay, one gets food and a place to live, and then the other one is able to digest the food because of the protist. Now, ecosystems, you have non-living components or abiotic components that are like sunlight, weather, temperature, soil type, things like that. And then biotic components, those are the various populations that help form a community. Remember, a community is several populations, whether it's squirrels, humans, people, snakes, whatever, that all live kind of in the same area. Now, you need to know that autotrophs make their own food. Okay, they need a constant energy source like the sun, and they also need inorganic nutrients, really things from the soil and water, to be able to make their own food. Okay. Green plants and algae, really anything that photosynthesizes, that's an autotroph. Okay, and some bacteria tend to be chemoautotrophs. They're able to make their own food kind of from nutrients and chemicals that they absorb. Okay. Now, heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are like us. Okay, heterotrophs are consumers, whereas autotrophs are producers. And heterotrophs, those are basically organisms that need to get their food from an outside source. Okay. Now, there are some organisms that just eat plants or eat algae, like herbivores. Carnivores really just are meat eaters. And then omnivores, omni really means both, and so they feed on both plants and animals. Okay. Now, in an ecosystem, you can also have decomposers. Decomposers play a really important part in the food chain and in our environment because they help break down things that are dead. Okay, they eat or help digest partially decomposed matter. They also release inorganic, matter to be used by producers. Okay, things like water or ammonia, stuff like that. And you have some things like earthworms, some insects, okay, flies like maggots, termites. They help break down things like wood that's decomposing, or rotting trees, and then also things that are buried in the ground that are deceased. Here's a food web, and so I figure y'all probably already know how to read this, but basically your producers and uh, are going to be really the grass right there, and then right below the grass or the trees, really the plants or algae, you have your decomposers. You have things like bacteria, worms, fungi like mushrooms and yeast that'll help break down dead materials. And that's why all of the arrows from each of the animals are pointing downwards, because they will eventually be broken down. And then once you get past the plants, you're going to have the first level consumers, which are going to be like the mouse, the bird, this beetle. Okay, looks like a squirrel or a chipmunk. And then they'll get eaten by the fox or the owl or the snake, something like that. So you just have to count the arrows, and that tells you what order, whether it's first or second or third level of consumer that it is. Okay. But the energy flow begins when producers take in like solar energy from the sun, and then the chemical cycling is going to happen when producers are going to take in these inorganic nutrients from the environment around them. And basically, producers provide the basis for all energy, in our food web. Now, energy is going to enter the ecosystem really in the form of sunlight most of the time, and then chemicals will enter when producers will take in these inorganic nutrients. Okay, and so consumers gain nutrients and energy from eating producers. Okay, and then higher level consumers like carnivores and omnivores, they'll gain nutrients from eating herbivores and other omnivores. Okay, kind of like we eat chicken or we eat beef, things like that. And then some energy is going to be released in the form of heat and the waste products, typically how we process our kilocalories. And this is just a real simple example of how producers take sunlight or solar energy, they give off a little bit of a waste product as heat, and then consumers tend to eat the producers. They are eventually broken down by decomposers. The consumers will also give off a little waste energy in the form of heat. Okay. And then decomposers will eventually break down the consumers into an inorganic, nutrient, pool, or basically a source of inorganic nutrients for the producers. And that's it.